Okay. All right, it's 7 p.m. Welcome to the December 20th, 2023 Parks Advisory Committee meeting. And Joey, can you do a roll call?
Yes. All right. Carol Allen.
Here.
Brenda Austin is absent, I believe. Jeffrey Hutchinson.
Here.
Zach Andrews, absent. Shelley Reynolds.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo, absent. Shirley Winters.
Here.
Robbie Cantrell.
Here.
Jim Hill.
Here.
Michelle Craver.
Here.
And staff is here. Jonah Jacobson.
Zach.
Oh, and Zach is here.
For the record, yes, indeed, hello. Sorry.
All right, well, you may call the meeting to order, or you already did that.
Yeah, so let's review and approve the September 20th, 2023 meeting minutes. If there's any changes, corrections?
I have a copy.
Seems like a long time ago.
I perused it earlier and I didn't notice anything as a problem.
Yeah, I reviewed this earlier. I didn't see anything on my end.
So I make the motion that we accept September 20th, 23.
This is Robbie, I second.
Has everyone had a chance to look at that? Everybody's good?
Yeah.
Okay, the minutes are accepted as they are.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next is communication from staff.
All right, well, it's lovely to see all of you. It does feel like it's been a very long time. Thank you for being here tonight. Over the 2 months that we have not all seen each other, Parks has been very busy with all of our fall leaf cleanup duties, first and foremost. We were quite busy through the months of October and November, cleaning up fallen debris in the city's open spaces. And after 40 days and nights sailing upon the seas of leaves, we have pretty much reached the other shore. I want to extend my gratitude to all the parks workers, water and streets employees, public works employees, for all their hard work keeping gutters and catch basins clear. All that heavy rain that fell at the end of November and beginning of December surely would have had a much greater flooding impact on the city had it not been for their, at times, seemingly Sisyphean leaf cleanup efforts. So our gratitude to them. The Windy Wonderland holiday events during the first week of December were a fantastic success. Overall, Troutdale saw 7.1 thousand visits to our downtown during Friday through Sunday of Windy Wonderland. This represents a 20.7% year-over-year increase from the previous year and a 75.3% year-over-year increase from 2021, which was the first year of the event. And it is a huge 220.6% increase year-over-year but that was 2020, which was the pandemic and also the first year of the event. I hope that some of you got out and enjoyed the downtown events. It was a lot of fun. Somebody, forgive me, I forget who, but somebody in our last meeting asked me if there was any news about the skate park. So I have a bit of news, not a lot. Troutdale Public Works is currently entering into the very preliminary phases of contract negotiations with a company called Spone Ranch Skate Parks, which is a well-respected California-based contractor who has built many skate parks across the country including public skate parks in Tillamook and Bend here in Oregon. So that's about all I have to report. There's not a lot of movement happening with that as of yet, but there's certainly more updates to come on the skate spot in 2024. You may have noticed also that the ADA improvements to Columbia Park walkways were completed in October and November. The pedestrian walkways around the parking lot, ramps, concession stand, and Imagination Station were widened for increased ease of use. A wheelchair accessible spectating platform was added to the side of Doust Field. A new bike rack will be added near the parking area later this year, and we'll also be getting some upgraded trash and recycling bins later in the year at Columbia Park. On those bins, they're called Big Belly garbage cans, and they're odor controlling closed units with a handle with greater capacity. They also have sleeves on either side of them that will be great for promoting city-sponsored events throughout the city. They're not going in everywhere. Also, these are being purchased through a Metro grant that the city was awarded. So we'll be putting them in the downtown area, including Mayor Square and Depot Parks, at Glenn Otto Park, Columbia Park, and Sunrise Park. So those will be installed at some point in 2024. They were just ordered. And yeah, so those will be great for controlling odors in the summer, I think, in the downtown area especially. A lot of business owners complain about odors from the garbage cans when the weather gets really hot. And in response to some homeowner concerns, a number of semi-hazardous trees, one really hazardous tree was...
Sorry, it looks like we just need to admit some people.
Oh, okay,
Stuff.
okay.
Sorry, before we continue.
Thank you.
All good.
Hi, Sandy, sorry. So yeah, in response to some homeowner concerns, a number of hazardous trees were removed and limbed along the perimeter of the Hampton Point Ravine Greenway shortly before Thanksgiving. And in December, parks workers cleaned up the slash and debris from the tree removal and improved the footpath that runs through the center of the greenway. I had emailed all of you about the ruts at Sunrise Park. We went out and did some handwork on them. I kind of felt that we shouldn't wait until at some point when the ground dries up there in the spring. So we went out and got as much of it done as we could with shovels and rakes, and so. But that will be addressed in earnest once the ground dries out as well.
So then, Jonah, is there consequences for the company that made all that?
There were some consequences, yes, and yeah, I did have some tough talks with the arborist who the city contracts with, who did that. And if you recall from my email, that was not contracted work that he was doing that day. He was accessing a neighbor's yard from the park side. And so, yeah, while we like him very much and have a long business relationship history with him, I made it very clear to him that that can never be repeated again. I also mentioned to him that, in terms of recovering or recuperating some amount of costs, I would appreciate it if he would either repair the ground himself or offer us a few free days of arborist work the next time that we need it, and he chose the latter. So the city will recoup our costs through sort of a horse trade with him, and I made it very clear to him that he is never to drive his truck in a city park between Halloween and Easter, and he is always to call me and ask me first. So,
do you mind me asking, did he have like keys to get in? Like, how did he? Because
no.
There was like a locked gate that was open.
He came in through the bottom parking lot.
Right. So
Yeah.
I know that even from the bottom parking lot, there was a gate that
Swing gate.
Yeah, the swing gate. When I noticed the ruts in the first place, that
Right.
gate was open.
Okay.
And I know that there's usually a lock on there.
So what happened there, and I found this out after the fact, is that he actually, a parks worker opened the gate for him, thinking that he was doing work for us and that I had called him. And so I also made it clear to all the parks workers under my supervision that they shouldn't do that, that if they see the arborist coming into a city park, that they should first ask him if he called me, and then they should call me themselves. So I actually was not aware that had happened when I wrote the email to you a couple of weeks ago. So I apologize for missing information there. You may have also noticed that just in the last couple of weeks, the old rail car behind the visitor center was demolished and scrapped and hauled away. Not the caboose in front, but the old silver rail car that was parked behind the visitor center. This is something that Public Works has been trying to make happen for a little while now. It's a necessary step towards the development of Depot Park and the URA property. And actually we were extremely lucky to find somebody who was willing to do it at no cost to the city and just do it for the scrap metal. Clearing that rail car out will make room for additional parking at Depot Park and those eventual improvements, potentially including construction of a brick and mortar public restroom facility that would serve the downtown area, as well as the new URA property park and the bike hub there. And Trail Keepers of Oregon will begin the Beaver Creek Stairs reconstruction project next week on Thursday, December 28th. All materials have been ordered for the replacement of the stairs. They are either already delivered or en route to the park shop and equipment yard. Trail Keepers will work to demolish the old stairs and install the new ones over the course of the winter. The new stairs and improved trail will be another important step towards increasing safe and easy access to the canyon, both for visitors and for the eventual bridge reconstruction project. And I sure hope we get that report from Scott. I haven't seen him trying to log in yet.
Well, we're waiting for that. Public to be heard. Do we have someone in person? Nothing? It's okay. On Zoom, Paul, do you have anything? No? Oh.
No, not right now, thanks.
Okay. You want to skip that for now and go to the next?
Yeah, I sure hope we get that.
Review of City Council's process with the dogs in Parks Ordinance. Discussion of Parks Advisory Committee recommended parks for allowing dogs on a leash in 2024.
Yes, so it sounds like many of you are somewhat aware of the City Council's process over the last 3 months since this committee made our recommendations for the dogs ordinance. So over the course of the last few months, the ordinance has been modified. Changes were made at the request of council to preserve the the final say of which parks allow dogs on leash by ordinance through City Council. And so the ordinance was changed so that the Director of Public Works no longer has the authority to designate on-leash dog recreation areas in city parks. That authority is held by City Council. And they also, in the most recent round of discussion on this ordinance, they did approve this resolution number 2611, which does officially designate both the new dog park at Columbia Park as the city's only off-leash recreation area. It includes Sunrise Park as well as an on-leash dog recreation area. And it also includes Beaver Creek Canyon as a on-leash dog recreation area. And that is a result of Public Works doing some extensive review of the DEQ stormwater permits and making a call that we believe that we can still qualify for the necessary permits and allow that. So
Johnny, can you go back? So which ones are the on-leash? Beaver Creek, Columbia Park?
Beaver Creek, Columbia Park only in the off-leash area. And so it was necessary to designate Columbia Park as an on-leash area as well, simply so that people can walk their dogs on leash from the parking area to the off-leash area and back. And so, and then the third one is Sunrise.
Okay, but everything else is,
Everything else is subject to review on a case-by-case basis by the city council.
Hey, John?
Yes.
I think the Beaver Creek Greenway is what they specified, not the canyon.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you for the correction. Yes, Beaver Creek Greenway, the entirety of it.
Sorry,
all trails, yeah. I appreciate that.
Which I wonder, is the College Nature Park part of that, or is that, because that's a different,
Right, that is not part of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but anybody, but I believe that property is leased from Mount Hood Community College. The city does not actually own the property. And so but in any case, that was not included in this ordinance, and I don't believe it's included in the.
but they actually connect to each other,
Okay,
right?
Right.
The Greenway and that College Nature Park
right, well.
are right up against each other, they actually connect.
Mhm,
And there's people walking their dogs all along Troutdale Road
mhm.
in that area.
Well, I would certainly be open to the recommendation of College Nature Park being added to the list of on-leash dog areas and so, you know, a big part of why I wanted to add this to our agenda tonight is because, you know, if there are additional parks that this committee would like to recommend to council as on-leash areas, again, I know that you all have already recommended all of the parks, but not all of them, not Glenn Otto, no, but I know you've already made a recommendation. So, but I believe that if there are individual parks that we would like to talk about and review and add to a list of suggestions for council, then
I think all the neighborhood parks need to be on leash. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, a couple days ago, I went to every,
Yeah.
John, I went to every
People are
park.
gonna use them, and if they're gonna designate them as no dogs, I wanna know what they're gonna do about enforcement.
Shelley, I went to all the parks a couple days on Monday, and most of the parks have a generic sign. They say no pets allowed. And those same parks have pet waste stations,
I know.
and people are walking their dogs. So the rules are already there that there are no pets allowed,
Mhm.
yet the community's using it to walk their dogs. And if the responsible pet owners are using the dog waste stations, I personally don't see the issue unless you've got all these complaints coming into City Hall about people walking their dogs in the parks. Now, I'm not saying that every park should be allowing dogs, because there are some playground areas that have, you know, low fences around it. That should be off limits. Go ahead, Carol.
well, and I would like to mention, a lot when it's not raining, I bring my grandchildren there. Wow.
Doesn't sound like 24 miles an hour.
No, it doesn't. And
My
there have been
first
parks that
station
we've gone
was.
to that are, that have signs, and then they have the bags, and the dogs are not on leash, they're playing balls with their owners, and I have a 1-year-old running around in the park, and I tell you, that really angers me as a grandmother. Now, I have a dog, and if I'm walking my dog somewhere, she's on a leash. So my concern is, and my frustration, is when we talked in the master plan about all the parks and the dog parks, and we have the off-leash park, and we spent months talking about this. We sent it to city council, and then all of a sudden, we've now got new ordinances and changes. It's frustrating to me because I want to know why I'm here. Why are they asking me for my opinion? Why do we come up with all these agreements that we talk about, and then city council goes ahead and just change it? So are we just a suggestion? So they can cross off a little box that said, yeah, Parks talked about it, but we're gonna overrule them. So I'm just curious as how all that works. Because this is not the only committee I have frustrations for, because I'm on like 4 of them. And so, but when the city council talks about parks in the future, I would love to know in advance, and I know as a citizen, I should know what my city council is meeting about all the time, but to be honest, I'm a school teacher and a grandmother, and I don't always get online. And so, because if it comes up again, I would love to address the city council and just kind of go, why are we changing when we've spent all those months coming to an agreement? I'd like to know what their perspective is. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And yes, I certainly understand your frustration. I'm sorry, I was just trying to get in touch with Scott, just to remind him, so I apologize for texting.
So I had some time off when we had the sunny but very cold days. And I was out working in my yard and paying attention to Llewellyn Park, which is a little residential park, right? And we had 12 visitors, 2 of which were kids on bikes, just riding through. One was a couple playing tennis, like, really, but okay. The rest were people walking their dogs. There was one family that walked their dog off leash. I know the dog really well. I'm not surprised. He wouldn't give you the time of day if you paid him to. But he was off leash. All of the rest of them were on leash. And I would have to say that our park is primarily a park where people walk their dogs. It has a nice big loop, has a big green area in the middle, and a little playground, and people are in that park all the time walking their dogs. They even will shut the doors when there's nobody playing tennis. They'll shut the gates and they'll play ball with their dogs in the tennis courts. I just can't see designating a residential park like that as a no dogs allowed park.
I think that was something that was reflected in the surveys that were conducted around this during the Parks Master Plan process. I think that people want to be able to walk out of their front door with their dog, walk to a park a few blocks away, exercise their dog, and come home. While we do have the luxury and good fortune of having some really excellent locations for a larger hike with your dog within a short drive, most people who live in Troutdale or far on the other side of Troutdale are not going to throw their dog in the car and drive 1,000 acres when they have an hour. And so I tend to agree, but so I have written down that the committee recommends all neighborhood parks as being dog on leash allowed. Right? Is that
It's really, nothing changes, right? It's been that way for years.
right?
And mind you, most Troutdale citizens, at least 90% that I've met and talked with, they are responsible owners. They pick up after their dog, they play with their dog, they're on leash, and and if they want to run their dog, sometimes they'll ask you, do you mind? And so, I mean, most of them are responsible, and I'm really proud of them, but there's always that percentage that are not, that really irritates the rest of us that are responsible, because it kind of ruins the responsible, right?
Absolutely,
So.
yeah. And unfortunately, you have to make rules that are applicable to everybody. Even the dog that is elderly and is not going to cause anybody any problems.
What I would love to see is dogs allowed on leash, the ordinance posted, and a fine posted.
Mm-hmm. And the question of enforcement is something that comes up frequently, and it's something that I think everybody is concerned about, the council included, very much so. And while law enforcement is not something that is in the job description of parks workers or in their their union contracts, and also not something that that Multnomah County sheriffs have the capacity to do at all times. It is important. It's an important piece of this puzzle. And to that end, I am searching for solutions. And something that I wanted to mention in the portion of our meeting where we discussed the Glenn Otto parking study also applies to this conversation, which is there are options potentially, at least for part of the year, at least for the summers, for contracting private security companies that have employees that are CJIS certified and are able to issue citations for things like off-leash dogs, open containers, parking, which we'll get to later. So that is something that is an option. It's something that's being discussed in terms of security for this very room, for bailiff services. And so that's something that we could talk about in terms of cost comparison to either having the police do enforcement or hiring our own in-house park rangers.
I think we should also discuss what parks we feel should be off limits to dogs.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yep.
So I personally think Glenn Otto falls in that category.
This is Sherry, but I don't know that this is the time to totally talk about it since what's been recommended so far is what's going through, but the problem with Glen Otto is you have Sugar Pine right there, and it's hard to distinguish what we've allotted, people visiting Sugar Pine and then kind of where they move to eat and that kind of stuff within it, where the fine line is.
There has to be a boundary between Sugar Pine and the park.
Sugar Pine is
I
in the
completely-
park. Sugar Pine, it sits within the boundary of the park. And so if there's a park policy that says dogs aren't allowed, then dogs aren't allowed at Sugar Pine. And so that is something that, if the policy around dogs were to, be officially established, I was going to say change, but because of the gray area around that, at least in the minds of parks users, it's not much of a change considering that the beach is off limits to dogs, but the park is, but not really. So anyway, if there were an official policy on the books that said dogs were not allowed at Glen Otto, that change would need to be communicated to Sugar Pine management. In the past, they have made social media posts saying that dogs were welcome in Sugar Pine, bring your dog on down to Sugar Pine. And so that change would need to be communicated to them.
Can there be something, sorry, this is Shelley, can there be something like no dogs beyond this point?
We kind of have that, yeah. I mean, we kind of have that with the beach. There's quite a bit of signage on the beach that says dogs are not allowed on the beach, and dogs are frequently on the beach. So I think it only adds to the confusion for people when dogs are allowed over here. In the summertime, the beach is arguably the main attraction of that park. People are wanting to go recreate and swim and cool down. And so I think it makes sense, in my mind, if dogs are not allowed on the beach, that they should not be allowed in the park, or vice versa. I think splitting the park in that way just adds to the confusion.
This is Carol. I think that if we just have a blanket, dogs are not allowed at Glen Otto, I think it's easier to enforce, and there's no misunderstanding of, I have them at the park, I have them down at the beach, I have them at Sugar Pine. I just think that we should just recommend that there's just no dogs.
Well, being that we're not, is this something that we should take a vote on, or it sounds like there's consensus that?
I don't know if we want to vote on tonight, but
Okay.
we can bring this back up in January, but I think we should be discussing, to what extent the parks are going to be allowing dogs. And I think, like Shelley said, I think all these neighborhood parks, you can put up all the signs. Like I said, there's signs have been up there for decades probably saying no pets allowed, yet everybody's walking their dog, and the park department put in dog waste stations years ago too, so. But I think there should be at least one community park that's a place where you can go where there aren't dogs. And If Glenn Otto wasn't on the river, then that would be a hard sell, but because it is, and we don't want dogs in the Sandy River in that area, then I think Glenn Otto kind of fits the bill.
All right. So I will say that while I did not, put on the agenda that we would be voting on this issue, and it was passed down to me that it would be nice if we could bring some recommendations back to the council's January meeting. So.
Which January meeting?
I believe the first one, the date.
Can we just take a straw poll? Are we all in consensus for that? Does anybody?
I think it probably needs to be a motion.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Oh,
Just before we do so, does anybody?
I'm not opposed to voting on it.
Gonna say no? I
Are
mean,
we pretty much in agreement that
that's what
we,
I'm
we're pretty much in
saying.
agreement that Glenn Otto should be off limits to dogs?
I think,
I think so.
I think
Okay.
there
And
needs to
then,
be-
are you pretty sure though that Sugar Pine is in the boundaries? Because I remember I asked Tim Siri about that. And he said, yeah, it used to be part of the park, but it's got the little, it's kind of between the road, the historic Columbia River Highway.
I
It's like a
know,
little offset now.
I know that their seating area is within the park
Yes,
hours.
it's
Okay, and where they have their parking spaces, part of the park.
Yes. They have no designated parking spaces. They use park parking, which is something that we will talk about in the Glenn Otto parking study. But
So then the other thing to think about is, if you were to allow Sugar Pine customers to have their dogs there, then there has to be this definite boundary with signage saying no dogs beyond this point, and
But
keep
then
the
it-
dogs in that area. There's some grassy area before you get to the trail down to the beach and before you get on the walkway through the park.
Right.
So it's possible there could be a dog walking area there with the dog waste stations, but then signage saying no dogs beyond this point.
Right, and that is, and that does beg the question, I don't know what percentage of Sugar Pine's business, I don't even know if they know this, I don't know what percentage of their business is people who are pulling off of I-84 on their way out the gorge or back from hiking or something like that with their dog in tow, stopping to get a milkshake. It's not my intention to hobble Sugar Pine's business, and so if there needs to be, or to cause people to have to leave their dogs in a hot car in the middle of the summer. So yeah, I guess that does beg the question, should there be, a small grassy area where that is enclosed, where people can let their dogs out of their car, at least momentarily.
I think we talked before though too about how there's a restroom issue where they have to enter even further into the park for where the restrooms are. And so even that, I'm gonna throw something out there. This could be not a good idea. This could be something that haunts me for years, but it seems like Sugar Pine should be providing restrooms for their customers. And that would probably be in the form of, old tuffies or blue rooms, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
Yeah, and then, again, I know that doesn't exactly relate to the dog thing, but if you bring a dog and you're at Sugar Pine and you don't want to leave your dog in the car you have to go to use a restroom in an area where it's off limits, it presents kind of an issue.
It does, and that's one of there's quite a few logistical issues. I feel like I don't want to have the conversation drift too far into Sugar Pine specifically, but related to dogs, that is one logistical issue with having a very popular restaurant in a small location that rents from a city park. There are kind of, that's one of a few places where these issues come to a head, specifically in the summertime in peak usage. But I think that maybe we should revisit that topic in the discussion of the Glenn Otto parking study, because it's very applicable there.
That's true.
Last thing on the Glenn Otto, dogs and no dogs in Glenn Otto. I understand, I think at this point, there aren't supposed to be any dogs in the beach. But I would suggest, I guess, that if we're going to recommend that we encompass the entire park, that we make sure the word gets out, right? That it's on all of our social media pages, it's published in the Champion, put it on the board as you're pulling into Troutdale, whatever, so that people are at least have an opportunity to be informed. Don't bring your dog. If you're coming, don't bring your dog. If you bring your dog, you have to leave.
And you don't have to go far. You go right across the bridge and go to Lewis and Clark.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, well, I will move to call it to a vote on whether to designate Glenn Otto as a dog park.
We want to do that tonight?
Sure.
Because they have to meet, they want to discuss this in January, correct?
I believe so. I mean, I think that we should also maybe do, if we're going to put that to a vote, I think we should also maybe do the vote to designate all neighborhood parks as well. I don't think that the council is going to have an issue with designating Glen Otto as dog-free. I don't imagine that there will be much objection to that. I think that if you would also like to see some movement happening on this first item, then we should maybe also take a vote on that, so that we can make that recommendation in January.
So do you want two motions, one that's on Glen Otto specific and then one that's on the general?
I think that'd be the way to do it, but if anybody has a suggestion.
Okay, so I move again to call to a vote on whether to designate the Glen Otto Park as dog-free. Second.
A second.
All
Roll call.
You'll have
in, oh, roll
roll
call, okay, and that's Jonah Vincent.
Sorry. Moved by Robbie.
You want to specify in that too, that Sugar Pine's enclosed in that Glen Otto Park? Maybe some fireworks there.
Yep. It's reasonable, I believe, but I'm not on the committee, so, or the council. So who seconded that first motion? It was Carol? Okay. All right. Carol, Alan? You
In favor of.
in favor of?
Of
Or
making
against?
it non-dog, yes,
Yes, okay.
yes, in favor.
Brenda's not here. Shirley Winters?
I believe I'm supposed to say yes.
Jeff Hutchinson?
Yes.
Zach Andrews?
Yes.
Robbie Cantrell?
Yes.
Shelley Reynolds?
Yes.
And Victoria Rizzu, who arrived late. I will change that on the attendance sheet.
Yeah.
Jim Hill?
Yes.
The vote is a yes. Okay,
I move that we make residential neighborhood parks on-leash dog park, available to dogs on leash.
This is Zach, I second.
That makes sense.
Yes.
sorry, just give me a moment. All right. Carol Allen,
Yes.
Shirley Winters,
Yes.
Jeff Hutchinson,
Yes.
Zach Andrews,
Yes.
Robbie Cantrell,
Yes.
Shelley Reynolds,
Yes.
Victoria Rizzo,
Yes.
and Jim Hill.
Yes.
The vote is a yes. Okay. Thank you all. Are there any other matters in the review of the city council's process with dogs that we would like to discuss?
So you're gonna go, are you gonna be the one that presenting to city council then on the first?
I likely will be, I likely will be, yes, and I would welcome all of you. I will send an email out with the date and a reminder.
Yeah.
And let me make a note of that as well. It will likely, just given that Mr. Travis Holden has been so involved in this whole process as well, he'll likely be there as well, so. Okay.
I move to close debate on the topic, the dog parks ordinance topic.
A second. All in favor?
Aye. Topic closed.
And I'm still not seeing Scott on there. I don't have his personal number. I did reach out to Travis and ask him to call him. He said that it went to voicemail, so I am so sorry, everyone. I don't know what's going on with that. I really sincerely, I know that Scott was aware of it and planning on being here, so I sincerely hope that everything's okay. But we will hear about the Beaver Creek Bridge in January, if not tonight. So my apologies on behalf of Public Works for that. I sincerely apologize.
All right, let's jump to the next agenda item, review of the 2022 PAC Council recommendations for Glenn Otto parking.
Yes, so many of you were here for this. I was not, and a few of you were not as well. But on July 27th, 2022, there was this memorandum subject recommendation from Parks Advisory Committee for parking control at Glenn Otto Park. And so having not been there myself, I've read this memorandum, but I know that this topic has come up in other meetings that I was present for. I feel like I have a pretty good read on how you all feel about this, both from this, this recommendation that this committee made and from our conversations together about it. And so it sounds to me like the committee is in favor of installing a self-service pay to park kiosk with enforcement via code enforcement and community resource officers, and that Troutdale residents should not be charged to park in their community park, and Troutdale residents should be provided a window sticker exempting them from paying to park. The issuance sticker would be based upon their water bill and their registered address with Public Works Water. So I am bringing this back to you at City Manager Ray Young's request to begin this conversation. This is something that he wants to bring before council in the coming months and take action on ahead of the busy summer season. And as I mentioned, there's kind of a lot of points where we hit snags with Sugar Pine. We love Sugar Pine, and they are our colleagues and neighbors, but also our tenants. And so Glenn Otto Park, as I think you all are aware, in the busy summer months on weekends reaches capacity fast and even over capacity. And frequently there are times when the caretaker at Glenn Otto ends up butting heads with Sugar Pine management over issues of parking, specifically related to the ability of people who are renting the Sam Cox building from the city for private offense, having access to places to park their vehicles for the building that they paid for. And so this pay to park idea is at least something that encourages people to visit the park, get their milkshake at Sugar Pine, and move along, and leave parking open to other people to use the park, or at least limit the amount of time that they are spending paying for parking. It also will go towards maintaining the parking lot there, which receives a lot of wear and tear. So I guess I just I wanted to discuss this. I also have copies of this memorandum for anybody who would like one.
I'm not seeing it, so.
Thank you.
And so I am just curious if anybody has any additional feelings or thoughts about this before this moves on to being reviewed by the city council and before we potentially purchase some parking meters or.
One thought would be, in an effort to maintain a relationship with Sugar Pine, designate, they can do 15 minutes or 30 minutes parking and have their parking ticket validated, and have 15 or 30 minutes of free parking for Sugar Pine residents with a purchase as an option. It doesn't help the parking, but it might keep them moving a little bit more quickly than just, hanging out if they know they have to pay after 15 or 30 minutes of parking. Might be an option for Sugar Pine to designate,
This is Zach. I have a question for staff. Jonah, if you mentioned the possibility of like a park ranger, how viable is like a seasonal summer park ranger that would be able to kind of twofold handle parking and perhaps enforce dog-related ordinance at the park specifically?
It is entirely feasible. Those services are offered by a local company that I have a meeting with on January 8th at Glenn Otto Park to show them the park and sort of draft up an estimate with them. So it really, I guess it's entirely possible. It just depends on if that is something that city management chooses to pay for. I imagine that it will be a more affordable option than retaining full-time staff, especially for a large portion of the year where we wouldn't have very much for them to do.
Sure.
There are some details to iron out, one of which would be making sure that our partners at Multnomah County Sheriffs are in the loop about that, that we're not stepping on any toes in terms of their union contract. I know that they don't like private security companies to use the term enforcement. It's better to use a term like patrol or enforcement support even. I think that, so I would probably need to, after meeting with this company that's called Oregon Patrol, it's a company that City Recorder Sarah Scroach has already had a meeting with to discuss bailiff services for this building during court days. So in our January meeting, I'll be able to report back to you and just tell you the results of my meeting with them, the cost estimate. In my mind, that is kind of the most viable option for all of these issues for parking enforcement. Again, for parking enforcement, we would either have to hire, a seasonal employee to sit in the parking kiosk and take tickets, or potentially, I don't know, hire another full-time employee. That doesn't seem like, a cost-effective option. So I think that one way or another for parking, especially, we're looking at some sort of contract service. I would like to, if possible, tie that into an increased enforcement presence in the parks that receive a lot of visitation, like Glenn Otto and Columbia Park.
This is Sherry, sitting on public safety. We do have, in the summertime, there is so many hours that Multnomah County has some presence in the park for sure. I think it's 4 days a week or something down there. I'd be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or something, not, I don't know, I can't remember, I don't know if you guys remember.
I don't remember the amount.
But it seems like it's a certain number of hours, and then depending on the weather, they move away from that area if it's not great weather, because they don't need to be down there.
Right.
So there could be something even there that, like you talked about stepping on toes or something, there could be something that,
I need to check with them and see, and see how they feel about that. It could be that they would, welcome some help with something like parking enforcement with open arms. It could be that they're like, yes, please take care of that. We have the other things that we would like to be focusing on, besides parking or dogs. But again, I think you all agree that I think it's important that, that they be kept in the loop about that plan.
Absolutely.
And so.
This is Shelley. If they move forward with pay to park, would that be seasonal as well, where it would be free parking during the other 10 months out of the year?
I believe so. That makes sense to me. I think that, yeah, it would likely be from, Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Exactly. Okay.
This is Zach again. I would amend maybe like the window sticker to another option, like a mirror hang or something that people don't have to like apply to their vehicles, or anything, like similar to like the state parks pass or something like that. You just hang it up on your rearview mirror, something simple like that. I think would be less intrusive to
Put it on your dash.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Displayed. This is Jeff, also on that same topic. The city can just issue those to people that come into City Hall as requested.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not gonna have 16,000 plus people all trying to get a
Yeah.
decal or something, right? It's gonna end up being probably a few hundred people.
Right. And I think that's a good idea just in terms of access for people who are, maybe are renters who don't pay a water bill. Maybe their landlord pays their water bill. I mean, I know that's less common these days than it used to be, but I think that, if somebody can come in and show a Troutdale address on their ID, that, they should be able to get a window hanger. And potentially even have a ticket that they were written dismissed. The first one anyway, maybe we should be saying, hey, if you would like to come in and show proof that you are a Troutdale resident, then we'll dismiss that ticket and you'll have your window hanger. So.
This is Jim. Jeff, did you mean that you would get it only if you came in to get it, or still that they'd come out in the water bill and then you could get?
I was saying, if you want to get the window hanger or decal for Glenn Otto, then you should go to City Hall.
Yeah.
You have to go there anyway, right, to show you the proof. Otherwise, the city, they don't want to hand out, think of the cost, 16,000.
I was just thinking that, a January mailing of that or whatever month, once a year, now the residents have it, but if there's somebody that's a renter that needs to get one, they can come here. I just wondered about the load on City Hall to now deal with that.
A lot of us don't get paper water bills too.
Good point.
So, and I would say, I think the idea is good, especially going in, because you could move in, you could buy your house in February, and you might want to use it, but you don't have, and you'd still have to go in. And, I'm maybe down to Glenn Otto, not very often, and parking there, and so my need to get one maybe wouldn't be. So I hate to see the waste of something being sent out if you're not really going to utilize it, and there'll be people that don't want to utilize it, so.
That's a good point. When we may, issue only hundreds to people who are interested enough to come and get one,
Right.
We could be spending money on making and mailing thousands of them that would never get used. So I think that's a good idea.
The upside of that is a lot of people don't ever visit City Hall, right? And this is a good opportunity for them to visit City Hall and see the opportunities that Troutdale has to offer, all the committees and other things that are going to be visible to them. Not that those folks don't have plenty to do already, but the other side of that is every Troutdale resident should visit City Hall at least once.
And hope there's parking.
Right,
All right, so
there's
that's
parking.
Well, and I think this, Carol, another thing too is, in my perfect world, City Hall would not have lunch from 12 to 1. Because a lot of us who work
Have
and we
one
work
from 12 to
like
1.
9 to 5 or 8 to 5, we can't get to City Hall. Or I have to beg my daughter to go to City Hall, or I have, see if my husband can get a later lunch to go to City Hall, you know what I mean? And I'm not the only one that has that problem, is, it's hard to get into City Hall when you have a full-time job. And so maybe suggesting that they, maybe we can call in and, they could look us up and maybe send us a pass. I mean, it just would be nice to have more accessibility.
This is Zach. To piggyback on that, actually, I know at the visitor center, they have parks passes during the season for like Multnomah Falls and stuff like that available. So, I mean, if it's like a double, like another avenue to go with, it could be an
That's a
option
good
there too.
idea. I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, public comment.
I was gonna suggest that, but also at Plaid Pantry, that's where we go buy our forest passes and snow passes. Those guys are really good about keeping track of those passes. You might consider just doing it at Plaid Pantry, because they already know how to keep track of what they sell, and if they can check ID. So if you're a Troutdale resident or not, they're taking pressure off City Hall.
It's not bad.
I think the only thing I would, and again, I'm devil's advocate most of the time, I guess. The only thing I might worry about is somebody who repeatedly goes and gets something to be able to somehow utilize handing out and, giving somebody the pass at either a discounted price, profiting from it, or, just,
Right.
usurp the.
Well, I think we would have to keep a registry, so if somebody came to City Hall and showed their ID and got, or wherever, Plaid Pantry, the only thing about that is then we would have to have them keeping a list and sending it back to us, saying this person received their pass, so that, somebody couldn't go in every other week and say,
Yeah.
I'm here to get my other pass, and so, and beyond that, just like with the forest pass, Zach, I've given my forest pass to my friend to go, to go up the mountain before. If that happens a little bit, it's okay, but it's we can't control that. But it is, I think, important to when a pass is issued, make sure that person's name is added to a list and said, okay, you got your 2024 pass.
Yeah.
You can come get your 2025 one next year.
Jeff, have a comment. So the original thought was a decal.
Right.
And the way a decal works is you stick it on the car that's authorized to park.
Right.
And if someone tries to peel it off, it comes apart in pieces and is destroyed.
Right.
So if you have a hanger, it should have your license plate number on the hanger. Because what's gonna happen, you get a bunch of people going to City Hall getting all these passes, and they're gonna be handing it out, and you're gonna have all these cars parked in the summertime and nobody's paying anything because they have hangers. Or people make copies of the hangers and hang them up.
Multiple cars though.
I was gonna say, let me play devil's advocate. I live in a neighborhood where there's some families that have many people living there. I did census at one point, enumerating 13 people living in a house, and 8 of them were adults. They could all have cars in one household.
Right.
There might need to be more than one issued. It's kind of that, I don't know. I mean, that's
Or
just
being
that.
able to switch between cars, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then, Jonah, how does that work for people who are going there for like weddings?
So that is a good point. We would have to, Tina would, have to issue, events passes or something like that, or I suppose we could, actually, this would be an excellent way for us to get an accurate count of how many parking spaces an event is going to need. Because this is something that comes up on every single busy weekend throughout the summer. And this is the source of the butting heads between Sugar Pine and the Glenn Otto caretaker, is knowing how many spaces to reserve for an event. And so there's a very easy way to do that, and it's for Tina, when she makes the reservation, to say, I need to give you a number of car passes for your event. How many cars are you gonna have? Okay, here's your passes. So that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone.
Well, and if I remember correctly, Tim always said that there was issues with parking the Sugar Pine. There's always been issues from
Yeah.
day one. And I remember him saying that for a while there was like 6 parking spots, but then they would utilize half the park, and then, I mean, and even Tim had conversations with them, and it went nowhere.
It's problematic. It is, and you know, it's hard to nail down a plan that all parties will adhere to. You know, and we'll continue to work on solutions with that you know, that meet everybody's needs.
Well, I mean, I'm not dissing on Sugar Pine. Obviously it's a success, and I'm glad it's a success for them. Maybe it's time to look for a bigger building, or, because they are busy. Maybe it's time to expand their business and get to a bigger building. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a business person. But
I think, you know, like any business owners, they want their business to grow. I do see a limit to how much their business can grow in that location. A natural limit, not one that any party is trying to impose upon them, but it you know, you can only get so big in a small building that you rent from a city park.
This is Zach. It is my understanding that they're looking or have acquired the property that burned down across the river.
They fell through.
That
Yeah,
it?
fell through.
Okay. All right. Good. My opportunity is still.
So, if this is something that we want to, you know, continue the discussion of, I certainly, we can talk about this again in our January meeting. I don't think that Ray is planning on taking this to council immediately, but it is something that he would like to see something happening with ahead of the summer. So I don't want to keep Scott waiting forever, because he's here, and I'm sure we all would like to hear what he has to say. So, but also, if there's anything else that anybody wants to add to this discussion.
I think we're good for this.
Public
We'll bring this
comment.
up in January.
Public comment?
Yeah.
Sorry, just being a resident down in that area, during the summer, the property across the street charges for parking. And has anyone talked to the art center about utilizing their large parking area as well? I mean, I know people do pull in there and park, they try to keep people out, but has there been any discussions about where people pay to park across the street that's not part of the park, or using the art center as well for?
Acknowledge that it's Glenn White's property, and
Correct.
he charges $5 a car, not the Sandy Riverfront RV
Right.
park.
He also rents the entire lot out to Sugar Pine on busy weekends, and Sugar Pine owners pay for that.
So that's already been in discussion, like that's already a thing.
Yeah,
I just want you to
as far as I
the
know,
last
and I don't
10
want to.
years, I have had problems with people coming in and parking in the park because there's no place to park down there. It's absolutely crazy. You have no idea day to day. And I have started a parking pass that any of my residents or their guests have to have a parking pass in the window hanging on their mirror. That has cut down a lot of people, because I say, if you don't have a pass, you will be towed. Glenn Otto Park, that poor little park, that used to be a community park, right? It's for us, the citizens, and now it's not. I'm there every day. It's not. It's Sugar Pine parking, and in the summer, it is Sugar Pine parking, and that's why people are just going anywhere and everywhere to park to get to the river. I mean, I totally understand you trying to figure out something. Maybe you should think about maybe a pass, like a ski pass. You know, residents that live in Troutdale, if you want to go down to Glenn Otto Park, you pay a less amount. I mean, a really small amount. People that are going to come down there and you want to come down every weekend, you pay a little bit more. But you sell a parking pass. It can be email. It can be, you know, online. But something needs to be done, because they park so bad. I don't know if you guys have been down there, but they park on the street where it says no parking, and they're parking 5 cars down. They park at my exit to where my rigs can't come out, and they're afraid to pull out because they're afraid they're going to get hit or they're going to hit someone. But they're parking at the driveway, in the driveway, on the sides. Yeah, something needs to be done. I appreciate you looking into this, but I've been dealing with it for like 7 years. It's terrible.
Can you remind, maybe you said it at the beginning, but can you say your name for him?
I'm Charmaine, I'm
Sure.
the manager at Sandy River Brown RV Park.
Charmaine,
And
manager.
I'm willing,
Sandy
and
River
hopefully
Farm.
one day you'll think of us like you do Sugar Point. Because
Absolutely.
we bring a lot of business into the park, into the town.
Mhm.
People come there and they go, they love our little town. I promote our little town, I promote Sugar Pine. I am always promoting everything for this little town. And that's what they look at. I want to come down there, I like being in the town, I like going in and spending money here. And talking about the beaches and the dogs in Glen Otto Park, yeah, there's signs all over that says no dogs allowed. But we can't control the beach. We don't have the ability to control the beach. They can come from the other side and bring the dogs over. You have to understand that we don't own the beach. But I have people in my park and I say, you are not allowed to take the dog over to Glen Otto. You can go to our beach, but not over to Glen Otto. But I see dogs over there all the time. They're always, and how are you going to enforce that? Well, now you're going to have people coming in and enforcing that. That's more money there. So to put up no dogs allowed, it's going to be broken. Just like the parking, it's going to be broken. Nobody, there's no enforcement to make them deter from not doing what they want to do. And I deal with it all the time, every day in the summer, from June 1st to October 1st. I am out there all the time on my 4 little days that I work and telling people, you need to move, you need to move, you need to get out, you need to get off, you need to go. It's, and rude, mean.
Thank you so much for your comments, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to meet you, and I'm sorry we haven't met before.
It's all
I'd like to
right.
give you my card, and
No, I
anytime
just-
you have issues, like, you please.
I appreciate it,
You know.
I want you, I live it every day, you guys, you gotta understand, it's not a simple fix.
Well, and if I remember correctly, sometimes the white property is not available and he has it chained up and people don't care, they tear down the chain and they go anyway. So, I mean, people are just rude. And, yes, he will rent spaces out there when he's available, but there's times he's not and people don't care.
Mhm. Right, well, so all of these are issues surrounding that little park and that little parking lot and it being, I think, it's fair to say, overloaded in busy summer
You charge,
weekends.
if you put up, okay, you get 15 minutes free from Sugar Pine if you buy something, but you have to have the enforcement.
And it's very hard to tell who's a Sugar Pine customer and who's a park
Yeah.
visitor. The lines blur.
And it's blurred because it's a community park,
Mhm.
it's our community park.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We should be allowed to go in there and park all we want. But if there's no place to park because people are in there, and they're not in there for 15 minutes, guys, come on. They're in there for half an hour, and then they go for a walk on the beach, and then they go back. I mean, it's really hard unless you have enforcement.
So Jeff, there's also people there that are there all day because they're taking their bikes off the rack and they're going to Mount Hood or whatever, and they come back in the
Absolutely.
evening.
Or they take the bus to work.
The bus
Yeah.
line is actually going away. TriMet is decommissioning that bus line.
I did read that,
But those issues are only going to increase with the installation of the Columbia River Gorge Bike Hub.
Yep.
So that, there's a lot going on. But rest assured that Ray Young and the council are also on board to find solutions to this issue. I mean, it was, it's Upper City Management that brought this to us tonight to discuss. So they are aware that there is an issue here, and so we are working on it, and we're all working on it together.
So can we bring this back, this is Carol, can we bring this back in January or February? So then we
Yep.
can have our recommendation to the city council, so when Ray's ready to talk to them, it's there.
Absolutely.
I approve if that had to be a motion. Or I second it, I guess, I'm tired.
Is there any other comments related to the Glenn Otto parking study before we move on up the canyon to Beaver Creek? No? All right, well, I would like to introduce to everybody, Public Works Engineer Scott Waddell.
Hey, Scott.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Terrific. Yeah, so my name is Scott Waddell, with the Public Works Department. I'm a civil engineer there, and I've been with the city for about 2 years. And I'm here this evening to share with you the latest in the ongoing studies of a Beaver Creek pedestrian bridge replacement project. So the brief backstory is there used to be two bridges that crossed the creek in Beaver Creek Canyon. They were both originally constructed by Parks personnel in the early 90s. And then a few years back, just from age and storm events, the bridges had to be decommissioned and taken out. So now there are no pedestrian bridges across Beaver Creek Canyon. And that's it's unfortunate. There's a existing pedestrian trails on both sides of the creek, but there's no way to get from one side to the other without hopping across rocks, which really is not the same experience. So we've taken on, or I suppose we've taken this over from Tim. He had a long-standing effort with Larry Magura, a consultant, to design a pedestrian bridge, and that came to a conceptual design that was a steel truss bridge with a set of stairs at one end, and that was going to be the new option for getting across Beaver Creek Canyon. This was a pre-manufactured steel bridge. It was a pretty standard design you might see in parks around the area. But it is something that was going to last a long time. Its design life is in upwards of 50 years. It's made of a weathering steel. So you have a very sturdy structure to hopefully do live a longer life than the previous one, kind of made out of a chopped down tree, but also just provide a good service for a long time to come. So one of the things that was a concern about that design was there was an estimated cost in 2019 of roughly $600,000. That was a number at the time that seemed insurmountable for a bridge in this location, and a lot of that cost is driven just by the fact that we're in a canyon. We're in a canyon. We're in town, and it's not an easy place to get to. So recently, in the last year and a half, we have brought Parametrics, which is another consulting engineering firm, on board to study the previous design package, take a look at what was there, and provide a cost estimate for that. So we would have some idea of what it was going to take to execute this plan that we had. So that's the first part of the work we had done from them. And then also, they're very experienced in doing these types of pedestrian bridges in this sort of park, but park plus environment. It's additionally forested. It's not just sort of a city park. So we felt good about it, but we're like, okay, give us a couple of options to look at, just at a high level, what else we could do in this location to cross Beaver Creek. So we added that to the additional scope of tell us how much it's going to cost to build this thing that we've got in design, and then give us a couple other ideas about what else would be possible and what you might recommend. So they go back, study that. They get a little bit of additional geotechnical information, know what kind of the soil conditions we're dealing with. And the results of those two pieces was, one, we had a cost estimate for our original design that had increased from in the neighborhood of 600,000. They're saying it's going to be closer to a million or million and more. And it's like, that's really unfortunate, but the a combination of the difficulty of accessing the site. It's hard to get the prefabricated bridge pieces in there. It's hard to get any of the construction materials in there. It's hard to get any of the equipment to work any of these materials. So it's just a difficult site. All right, that's what you're looking at. But as far as your alternatives, what they would suggest is, rather than a bridge and a staircase, is 2 bridge sections. Okay, well, there are a couple ways you can do that. And then they gave us a few different options on materials. So either still using this steel, this weathering steel, sort of the toughest option available. There's a secondary option that is a wood structure, but it's a larger, more substantial wood structure. Or there's a glue laminate wood structure that is sort of the most efficient way to, cost efficient way to get a bridge of this size in this location, to carry people that want to hike around Beaver Creek, carry them through the park. So those options, it's like, okay, if you want to stick with the steel, you're still looking at more than $1 million. You're going to need a helicopter to get some of the pieces in. That's going to be expensive, even though we have the airport right there. It's just simply not the same scope as loaded on a truck, loaded off the truck, install in place. So the 2 wood structures are closer to that original cost estimate in the $600,000 range. It's still a lot of money. A lot of that money is not necessarily just going to how much can a wood beam cost, but it is the additional difficulty that goes into trying to expand the little access road that comes out of the neighborhood up above, trying to get this construction material down there in a way that gets us a long-standing structure that will hopefully be there for on the order of an additional 30 years. So those were the key points of their memos. And then it's like, okay, well, what's it going to take if we want to design this bridge? We have an idea of roughly what it would look like. We have an idea of roughly what it would cost to construct, but there are additional permits and land use application, and there's hoops to still be jumped through as far as design and drawings and specifications to be compiled. So it's like, how much is that effort going to cost? So we just got back the scope of work and their draft cost estimate for that work, and it's looking like $250,000. At this point, in order to continue that work, we'd need to enter into an open bidding process. We aren't able to just award the contract to design this project. So it's a lot of money at hand. It's a big project. And while it would have a significant impact to the residents of Troutdale, and especially people nearby, and really revitalizing the Beaver Creek trail system as it is, it's a big lift and it's a very expensive project. So there's not going to be an immediate there's a few steps left to go before we can build, and that's the latest on Beaver Creek Bridge. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have at length about any more of these items. I know that you've had a great interest in this. This is a project that's been ongoing even longer than I've been here. So if there's anything that you feel like I'm I'm confused or missing, or key information you'd like to share, I'd be open to any of it.
Scott, this is Carol, I have a question. So,
Hi.
just for clarity, so you said that the steel truss bridge is about $1 million to $1.5 million. The wood structure is 600,000, and the permits and drawings and applications, 250,000?
That is correct. It's some pretty eye-popping numbers. We have a breakdown of what they have, sort of a hour by hour, task by task. And like I said, the number is significant enough that this is something that we can take the conceptual drawing and release this to the consulting community at large and solicit bids to say, hey, is $250,000 really what it's going to cost to design this thing? And that may also affect the construction cost estimate of the $600,000 or the million plus dollars.
Is there a grant that we can apply for?
There is grant money. There are people at the city working on that as we speak. So there is not 100% of the cost burden going to be on the city. The exact amount of that grant money, I think, is yet to be determined, but it's not insignificant. We're not pursuing tens of thousands of dollars. We are pursuing hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money.
Just to make a quick note, Mr. Bill Peterson is the city's grant writer. I'm not sure if Bill is working on these specific grants that you mentioned, but in future meetings when we are discussing grant funding for the Beaver Creek Bridge, I'd be happy to invite Mr. Bill Peterson to talk about grant funding.
This is Sherry. Is there any way, there's some other option, we don't need a Cadillac bridge down there. We don't need all the extra bells and whistles. It could be a very simplified bridge, single crossing. I mean, I'd suggest
Understood.
maybe a bridge.
Yeah. There are a few options, but some of what is driving the cost is there are underlying permit requirements for Beaver Creek and the areas next to Beaver Creek that didn't used to exist. When we built this bridge the last time, when the one that we who saw it in operation can remember, and sometimes that we see in like national forest settings, sort of a felled tree with some sort of walkway on it. There are things that make Beaver Creek special. It's a fish-bearing stream, so it's not just sort of a drainage ditch. It's a recognized stream in a way that is brings about additional complications to the permitting process. There are recognized wetlands in the area, and these just bring the overall cost of design high enough that the cost of the bridge specifically is not insignificant, certainly, but it is not the only thing that's making this a very expensive project. So I guess that some of the explanation for why not choose a cheaper bridge is if we are investing a significant amount of money into the design, the permitting, and construction cost, that what you trying to make sure that you get a bridge product that is commensurate to the design, so it matches what we've spent on the design and the construction cost.
It just concerns me because the canyon itself is limited to the number of people that can go down into it. You know, you actually have to be a little bit in shape to want to traverse back out of there at any point, steps or just hillside climbing or, trail climbing out. Also, I don't know if it's possible, but I know Woodrow on our public safety talks about having Eagle Scouts with an Eagle Scout project with a lean toward ideas and things like that. And I don't know if that's a source we can access with less cost, because I'm sure you can have a hard sell on some city Troutdale residents wanting to pay for something they never utilize. But I like the idea of a bridge.
This is Jeff. Scott, a few months ago, I was working with trail keepers. We were restoring one of the trails in the canyon. And they said that in Silver Falls State Park, in a very remote location, they needed to have a footbridge go across a stream. And they used aluminum and fiberglass panels for the actual deck. And they had volunteer hikers hike that in several miles on their shoulders, because it's all lightweight material. And they built the bridge on the site. I'm just wondering if something like that could eliminate the cost for having to have a helicopter, or having something that has to be brought in on a very difficult manner.
Understood. I think that that is something that is an option, and there are places where that's the right answer. I will say that one of the things that's come up in the discussion with the bridge consultants is that we're in an interesting location because of our proximity to town. You're talking about a very remote location. You're accessing it with volunteer hiking. You're in a state park. There are some additional leniencies granted when you are far enough outside of town that it's like, okay, this is a low traffic location. We're high enough and far enough into the forest that some of the wetland and stream considerations don't exist anymore. So I think one of the things that is sort of the trick of Beaver Creek specifically is that it is very difficult to access, and it is right in town. And that creates a difficult challenge, because it's like, hey, like this is a natural area, and it's a tiny slice of nature surrounded by civilization. And so there are a lot of additional restrictions that come along with building something when you are in what is rightfully a protected location. Not to say that state parks are not protected, but you get a little bit more room to negotiate what you're going to put in the further you get from town. Like, say, further you are outside of city limits, the easier things get to build.
If I may, Scott, I'm sharing this screen here. This is something that was forwarded to me by Susan Shen of Trail Keepers of Oregon, who worked on that bridge in Silver Falls State Park that Jeff Hutchinson mentioned. And so, and forgive me for not sharing this with you sooner. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you want to have a look at this and take some time with it. And there's some schematics here, but it sounds like this is a glulam wood bridge that is built on logs over rock gabion abutments. And is this at all similar to the and so I'd preface this by saying that sent me this this schematic on the from the bridge that she worked on in Silver Falls, and said that they built this bridge for about $1,000 a foot. It's a 65-foot long bridge, so about $65,000. And now, granted, this is an Oregon State Park, and they don't have the same permit restrictions that we do in Beaver Creek. And I don't know about access or what, so I understand that we're not talking apples and oranges here. It's not the same, we're not talking apples and apples. It's more like apples. But I'm just curious if this bridge, just from, at first glance of these schematics, Does this look at all like the Glue Lamb Bridge that you were talking about that was around $600,000?
Unfortunately, yes. It is similar. There are a couple key differences. One of the troubles of Beaver Creek is we're low enough, we're far enough downstream that the flood elevation is pretty high. So you are building, I think, take for example in this drawing, um, it it seems like, okay, a bridge over 5 feet of water or a bridge over 500 feet of water. If the distance to span is similar, what's so different about the bridge? And to a certain extent, there isn't that much different. But one of the things that's driving the Beaver Creek Bridge design is, I think you mentioned that there was a 65-foot long bridge. What's currently being proposed is two 65-foot spans, which still isn't $600,000, but it's roughly like in the dollars and cents of the bridge materials, it is roughly similar. And I think that maybe is actually a great way to demonstrate that it's not even so much the design of the bridge specifically that is making this such an expensive proposition. It's that trying to uh, get the parts in place, get the equipment there necessary to maneuver the size of beams that it takes to make it a cost efficient process. I mean, you can have a longer length piece that saves you money, but now you have this longer thing that you're trying to maneuver down the side of the canyon and into place. So um, these are roughly similar types of structures as to what we would be installing. Um, it's just that the additional cost of larger foundations is some of it than these have here. Some of it's the additional height that makes the foundation larger to clear that flood elevation, and some of it really and truly is the cost is exponential because of how hard it is to get down here.
Okay, this is Sherry.
Mhm.
Two questions. One,
Yep.
two 65-foot sections, meaning the bridge would be 130 feet long?
I think here, I have these. I think it's almost it's a little bit longer than that, but yes, I mean that's on the that's roughly what we're talking about is 120, 130-foot long bridge.
So
And that's to,
a lot longer than the previous bridge.
Yes, and some of that is so what we had in the previous bridge, log over the creek, terrific, short as possible, and unfortunately, one of the things that happened is it got washed out with a flood. So in order to one of the things that is generally frowned upon in a stream of what is considered to be a very like a it's important for fish habitat, and that brings about a lot of additional requirements, is that they don't want your bridge washing out in a flood. Like, hey, please do not build something that is going to get washed downstream when it rains, even rains hard. But that means that we now have either originally was a bridge with a staircase, or in order to get far enough to match up the 2 points on the canyon with a bridge is what starts making it very long.
Okay, just because I've lived here so long
Mhm.
and I've been down in that canyon for so many years, when the bridges were put in, like you said, in the 90s, and the last one was actually cut out, Yes, it was damaged by some flooding and then some, I'm gonna say pandemic, crazed children that jumped and jumped and
Sure.
jumped. Then it got cut out and lots of it got left in the creek. The top panels pulled off, but the big logs down below left in chunks in the creek. And slowly but surely they've been washed out. Beavers build their dams down there lots of times. But I think I'm concerned because we're acting like we're gonna buy something new that's gonna maybe last us 30 years, and what we did before was about 30 years. So are we really gaining anything out of what we're supposedly increasing? I mean, maybe it's just a 30-year bridge and that's just the way it is, or something like that. But I think what I'm just getting at is, it was a pretty wide bridge before. And I say wide because I don't think it needed to be near that wide. And then I also think that I'm sure I could muster up a lot of help to carry down pieces if we can have this lightweight stuff. We can, have a great volunteer effort, I'm sure, and we could put together something pretty special.
Yeah, I think I hear you, and it's something that has come up, I think, in our minds even continuously. Does this fit the area? Is this solution the right solution for us? And I don't mean to harp on this as ad nauseum or as a blanket excuse for or an explanation for why this is how it is. But it is important that the goalposts have legitimately moved. Um, the rules that are in place for building a structure of any type, and especially a pedestrian bridge, in this location, are very, very different than they were even just 30 years ago. And that's what uh, is probably the hardest part to accept, is that there was a solution, there was a bridge there, and in an easier world, or a better fitting to this situation, it does seem like there must be a cheaper way to get just the people across the creek. And whether be it the Eagle Scout project that was mentioned, be it some sort of volunteer effort, the finding a location that is a narrower point in the creek. All of those are things that um, seem on their face like great solutions, um, and truly are and have been for a very long time reliable solutions for solving this problem. Um, and it is it was legitimately shocking to me as well that, okay, what do the pedestrian bridge experts tell us? It's not, um, okay, you've got an option that's 50 grand, an option that's 100 grand, and an option that's 500 grand. And that was like, okay, that's kind of what the gut seemed to say to me. Um, and so I understand that these numbers that I'm sharing are way outside the bounds of what seems like makes sense. And I think the only defense of it is that these are people who are engaged with this on a regular basis. This is the pedestrian bridge experts. They build bridges like in Silver Falls. They have experience with big and small. So it's not even a matter of, well, yeah, of course the bridge experts want to build a giant bridge. It's like, okay, well that seems like an explanation. Um, but these are people who are experienced with how to get a pedestrian bridge into a difficult location. Um, and this is what their expert advice is telling us. These are your options, however alarming they may be, uh, to the sensibilities.
This is Zach. I really appreciate you sharing with us, and I think maybe it might be helpful to be more specific, because we just keep getting a lot of suggestions like, oh, we can have a bunch of friends carry down materials and throw a bridge together, but like realistically, because of its location that you've been referring to with the city and stuff, there are FEMA regulations, there are all kinds of things in place, right, that go into just like how even the structure has to be made and manufactured and a lot of requirements like that. So, I mean, maybe it'd be more helpful to get specific, but I was wondering if it was possible at all for us to, even after the fact, maybe just obtain some of the designs and stuff that you're referring to, looking at cost estimates, because you mentioned that you were able to see it and see the cost and everything. It'd be cool if we were able to just look that over even too, just to.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to share. I'll pass it through Jonah. But there are a couple of different documents that I can share with you. There's the that have really, they do have that sort of specificity. So I think it's not necessarily yeah, I'd be happy to share those, and we'll make sure you get a hold of them.
Thank you.
I also, if I could, I just wanted to clarify one point, if I'm understanding this correctly. So the difference between the Blue Lamb Bridge and the Steel Bridge, when you said it buys us an additional 30 years, I think with the more expensive bridge, we're talking on a lifespan that's potentially more like 50 or 60 years, not 30, correct? Or more than that.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go through all the trouble of doing this, then, you know, potentially spending $400,000 more so that we don't have to do it again is a good idea. Just throwing that out there. Also, if I'm not sure if that, you know, the number for the plans, that $250,000 estimate for the plans from that company, it is my understanding that, you know, that maybe kind of was piggybacked onto some cheaper work that we got through them, and that at that number, regardless, at that number, we would be required to go through the competitive bidding process. So I would be happy to share with you the contractor who built that bridge in Silver Falls, if we get to the point where we need to solicit other bids for plans. Just throwing that out there as well.
Yeah, terrific. That is where we are. And in part, one of the reasons why we're not allowed to grant this kind of a contract at this dollar amount is because you do want to protect yourself from sort of, hey, let's give you an idea, and then we'll make money on the back end. So that's happy to receive any sort of any of the contractors that you've mentioned. Happy to include them, and yeah, we would be soliciting it to a number of companies, making sure we get multiple bids for what would be similar work.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have any other questions at the moment? I'd be happy to follow up with some more documents and specific numbers in our January meeting from that. So.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, happy to share. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear about this. And yeah, this is more information than we had, but there is still a long way to go between today and a bridge. And I'll make sure you get a hold of some of the specifics, and we'll be in touch and happy to talk more as we get through this process.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks.
Ready to move on to the next item?
Sure thing, yes. So we got, we already did that. We're at committee concerns and initiatives, future agenda items, and closing comments.
All right, real quick though, any public comments before we go ahead?
Oh, sorry.
No? Paul, anything?
I have a comment.
Oh, okay, cool.
How old long has that bridge been there? I mean, I'm looking on the outside watching you guys. How long has that bridge been there?
A lot longer than I've worked in Troutdale.
Well, he said the early 90s is when they built it, but
And how
there's
many times has it been torn,
twice, could be.
Well, it's not something that you view from the road. You have to be up in the
She's
canyon.
been telling me that usually the kids go down and tear it up.
Well, so vandalism gets done down in there.
So my question is, I mean, back in 1990, when they probably put $50,000 of,
They dropped some trees and then laid some stuff in there.
and now we're at almost $1 million. As a citizen, I'm just making, maybe we need to figure out how many people use this bridge before we spend $1 million to put it back in. If kids are just gonna destroy it, I mean, is it really, we could be using some of that money to help Glenn Otto Park to figure out what to do there. I mean, it's common,
If it was a steel bridge, the kids wouldn't be able to destroy it.
Exactly.
And it would be wildfire proof.
So then you put in the money, as long as it's gonna stand. for
And having this
60 more
bridge
years.
would increase the number of users, because now we have a trail system, a
Yeah, and
loop.
that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was actually one of the top rated responses to the surveys that were conducted in the Parks Master Plan process, and it's something that my office fields quite a number of calls about. Is for people who don't spend a lot of time walking in Beaver Creek Canyon and use the trails and the bridge, it's, you wouldn't even know it's there. But for the people who know the area and do use it, they love it, and it's very
And I have
important.
people asking me all the time, where can I go hike?
Right.
And I tell them,
they can leave from.
yeah, they can leave from
here.
the RV park and go up the back way. And yeah, so it gives me another option to entice customers.
Jeff here, John, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Does your crew, are they responsible for the canyon?
Yes,
much?
yeah,
As part of your responsibility?
yep, there's a full.
So if a large tree fell across the creek, you can't touch that tree. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose
I'm a
not.
beaver,
I suppose if a bridge that weren't to code were to somehow magically
just-
appear overnight there,
And it's also just a question of any tree. And,
I would call the Boy Scouts if that happened and say, hey.
I'm saying this, any tree, small tree or whatever, I'm not talking about a footbridge, that could be, but any tree that goes across that creek, that's a natural occurrence, that's nature, right? You can't go in there and have your crew with chainsaws, right?
I wouldn't touch it, I wouldn't touch
believe.
it unless it was a safety concern that people were voicing concern about, and if I did, then I would probably need to go through the same, the
Get
same sort
permission
of.
and permits.
Yeah, the same sort of permits and environmental regulations that Scott is mentioning that relate to building a bridge there in the first place, so. Yeah, so, maybe we'll get lucky and a couple of trees will fall right in the right spot.
I'll tell you what, they might have fallen this past week.
Yeah.
Transplant trees that have already fallen on the creek, because there's several just down here that have fallen recently.
Carry
Troutdale Parks is not gonna be doing that,
The point I was trying to make is it seems that this area is a very sensitive area and that, you can't go in there and do anything.
Yeah, it's,
I
it is difficult to do a lot of things. You have to take precautions, reasonable precautions, and do the best you can to be really, really careful. I mean, I instruct my crew anytime that they're using gas-powered tools to be extremely careful with spillage of chainsaw bar oil or fuel in the canyon. The Trail Keepers of Oregon organization, I'm having them cut their entire stair kit at the park shop and do all of the painting of end cuts at the park shop and let everything dry before we bring it into the canyon. So yeah, I mean, there's both legal environmental constraints and just common sense practices that are.
I'm thinking the most of the regulation is the stream itself and then maybe, 50 feet up or something, but like the canyon walls in the areas there, it seems like you have more leeway. Because you're restoring a trail, you're not having to pay $250,000 to get
Right.
permits and studies, right?
A lot of the, I can't speak to the specifics on this because it isn't really my purview, but a lot of the water quality regulations have a certain amount of distance associated with them from the creek, commonly 100 feet. So I, to that extent, yes, it does get a little bit easier or less regulated the further away from the creek that you get.
Real quick. Paul, did you have any comments?
No, right now, thanks.
Okay. Committee concerns and initiatives, sorry? No, she came.
Oh, that's right.
Committee concerns and initiatives, future agenda items, closing comments.
Well, I don't know about January, but at some point, we probably will need to discuss some other big numbers related to the replacement of the surface at Imagination Station.
No kidding.
It's that surface is failing due to it being installed incorrectly. And unfortunately, the contractor who installed it, or the LLC that installed it, no longer exists anymore. There's nobody to sue.
I was gonna say, wasn't that supposed to last like 25, 30 years?
We're chasing potholes out there all the time. It's not worth it. The thing needs to be redone.
What was the material? Was it pulverized rubber?
Yeah, it was rubber mulch glued together, which coincidentally is probably not the best material to use in terms of the 6 ppd chemical that is killing the salmon. So we certainly will look at cheaper alternatives to that, and something that's easier to install. But I'm just, this is a future agenda item. This may not be January. I'm gonna need to solicit some bids, but that also could be in the neighborhood of $1 million. So
There's a park in, I think it's Canby, when I went to Canby, that has a material, it's a multicolored. You ever seen like when you tear these old pillows apart and there's like all this foam comes out in every color of the rainbow? It's that type of material, it's all pressed and it's a flat surface, and when you step on it, you just kind of, a kid could fall from 5 feet and you just float right up, but you might want to look into that possibly.
Yeah, I'll check that out. There's also actually some really high quality artificial turfs that are made for playgrounds specifically. And that's something that Ray forwarded to me recently in relation to looking further out to a playground at the URA property. But in any case, that's something that I want to throw out there. It's going to be a bitter pill to swallow at some point, and we got to start talking about it in 2024.
Well, and this is Carol. I also noticed when I was out there with my grandchildren, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, before the rain, the boat doesn't move anymore. The bird doesn't sing anymore. I mean, there's so many things that just don't work there anymore. And I was really sad.
Right. Yeah. It takes a lot of maintenance, but the surface.
Yeah.
The surface is kind of a concerning one. It's just, we do our best to go out and fill holes as they come up, but it's oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Jenna. So for the future agenda item, what you'll do, I expect is probably bring us options and the approximate costs of those options to view. Perfect.
So that'll probably be a few months, honestly. I mean, I'm gonna have to talk to some people. I'm gonna make some phone calls and get some estimates.
Not gonna have it done tomorrow, huh?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
I've been here since 5 a.m., but if I go back to my office, maybe I can crank it out before tomorrow. I don't know. So.
Nobody wants your job, Jonah. Nobody wants your job.
This is Sherry, just a quick question on that. So if it had been installed correctly, would it have lasted?
It should have lasted. The issue is that they didn't, the subsurface that they put in was put in too thin and unevenly, and there was gaps underneath it where water gets in and freezes and thaws and, expands and contracts, and just, so it's, it was not done right. And I wish that there was somebody I could take to court about it, but limited liability. So.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Let's start with Jim. Any closing comments?
I have none, thank you.
Shelley?
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year.
Christmas.
Thank you. Jerry?
Ditto what she said.
Zach?
I think just for maybe a future agenda item, it might be fun to, I mean, every time this time of year rolls around and the wind picks up, it always makes me think of kind of the talk we had about maybe some kinetic art in certain areas, as far as, you know, kind of making a more signature Troutdale approach to maybe add to some of our parks and features like that.
I like that.
Yeah, so it might be fun to kind of talk about, maybe see what we can do to implement that over the coming year, perhaps.
Thanks for coming.
But yeah, that's all I got. Merry Christmas to you guys as well. Yeah.
Roddy?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
for coming. Yeah, I actually have a couple things that I would like to bring up. So first of all, I was walking with my wife in Columbia Park, and I pointed past the play structure to where the dog park is. And I go, believe it or not, there's a dog park over there. And she goes, no, there's a no trespassing sign. And I go, no, you can walk through there and go, and she goes, but there's no path. So these were two things that were just brought up right away. And I stood there and I was like, no, you're actually right, because that no trespassing sign, if you look closer, there's the fine print that says no trespassing around all the students, and it's referring to the big tank or whatever that's behind
the water
thing.
towers.
It really does. If you just stand there and just take a step back, it looks like it's saying no trespassing for the literal opening that has no path. So something to keep in mind, you know, obviously we can access it from the Parks building, but even there, it looks inaccessible because there's a gate or some sort of fence that you gotta walk around. So I'd assume really only the neighborhood people who are walking around, we know that that dog park's even there. Before it opened, I walked back and I was like, I didn't even know that this existed back here. So that's the first thing, not necessarily an agenda item for right now, just something to keep in mind that I wouldn't expect passersby to know that that dog park actually exists unless you go in and then turn and then you see the gate and all the fence there. So something to note there. Second, it was actually in the Troutdale paper where you had talked about the Friends of Trees or whatever that's called, about the backyard habitat. Has anybody seen the backyard habitat stuff? So I actually had them come out. If you're not familiar, it's a volunteer organization that was in Portland. They expanded out to Troutdale, and they come through, it's all volunteer, they come through, they look at your backyard, they take public records, and there's a set of criteria. There's certain levels of certification that you can meet, but ultimately what you're trying to establish is a backyard habitat. So you have things like native plant species, you know, watershed control, you know, pollinator habits, bugs, and kind of other types of habitats. And it was really, really enlightening for her to walk through and point out the invasive species, but also point out the potential that we had within our backyard to create you know, something cool, a backyard habitat. All I could think in my head was, man, I wish we could do this for the parks. So in summarize, you know, we have that hummingbird, is it the hummingbird?
It's a butterfly. It's a
butterfly.
Yeah. It's a sport monarch butterfly.
So that same kind of concept can be cross-applied to almost every single one of our parks, because the very lowest level of certification only required 10% of the square footage of the lot size to be dedicated to things like, you know, native plant species or watershed management, things like that. So from our side of things, it really wouldn't take a lot to essentially take, you know, what have been cleared to be spaces for humans and kind of give them back in a little bit way through, you know, these 4 or 5 or 6 different levels of criteria. So I would like to put an agenda item, not for next month, I would say for either February or March. I would love to get in contact with either the person that came out and went through our backyard or somebody else from the Backyard Habitat organization to maybe walk through a couple of the Troutdale parks and then come to us and walk us through the same thing that she walked me through, because it really was incredibly cool. And like I said, I couldn't stop thinking of the potential that we had to utilize our parks and open spaces just a little bit more wisely.
Isn't that primarily for like residential?
It is, but those concepts can be cross-applied to, you larger areas. So we're not necessarily looking for like certifications.
Got it.
What I would like to do is establish those best practices and this planting and native plant species specific to the Portland areas and implement that in kind of a wider berth. So
Yeah, no, that's excellent, and I want to do that as well, and so I will most certainly add this discussion to the agenda in the coming months. I have been looking at a few areas that I would like to make some native nursery orders for, and put
And they
in
also,
some things like sorrel
they
and
give
salal
discounts,
and
they give
and
discounts
some
as
very-
well, so we
Yeah.
got a huge bucket
Mhm.
of coupons for pretty much every nursery in the Portland area, and we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50% off of native plant species used for this purpose. So
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that something could be negotiated as well, and that we're using it for a much larger application.
Right, yeah, possibly. I mean, we also keep in mind that, we also qualify for certain state pricing through certain nurseries as well, which may be an equivalent or even better deal than what Backyard Habitats is able to offer to residents. That is a really cool organization. I do know about that organization. I see their signs all over Portland, and,
Yep.
and yeah.
But we've got it in our front yard,
Yeah,
so.
it's a cool thing.
Hey, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say, just to piggyback a little bit off of what you had talked before about, I think coming maybe in February, something with trees.
Oh, yeah, Friends of Trees, yeah, so that is February 10th, we're scheduled to, so that is something that I will add an update on
And you can get that for your house as well.
Yeah.
So they'll come out and do it for your house.
Yeah. And so their planning event is coming on February 10th, so I will definitely provide an update and some specifics on that in our January meeting. That'll be taking place, the staging area and kind of kickoff party is at Columbia Park. I've reserved the shelters on February 10th, so they'll be bringing in all of the trees. But yeah, we can talk more about that in January. If anybody, I will say though, the event is live on the Friends of Trees website. So if any of you are interested in getting a tree and planting it through that program, go to Friends of Trees website. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of you. Just Google Friends of Trees Oregon, and it'll take you there, and you can enter your Troutdale address, and it'll pop up. You are eligible for this event. So, but I'll provide more details and a reminder on that in the January meeting.
Thank you, John.
Sweet. Final thing that I just wanted to solidly make an agenda item for January is the basketball nets. So not to be a squeaky wheel, but I have gone around to 3 parks now, and at all of them, I've actually seen kids playing in the winter, in the cold, and rain on no nets. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I told my folks to put them out, but if they didn't do that, I'll
just
tell
yesterday.
them again.
So that was yesterday. So
All right.
I would like to make that a formal agenda item just to get an update if I'm riding around and I haven't seen that. So that was it for me. Thank you very much.
I am personally gonna go put those up tomorrow.
That's not me. I'm riding my bike and I see these kids shooting and it's bouncing all the way back. So
I'm sorry, Robbie. I asked somebody to do that, and I think that fell through the cracks. But I will go put the basketball nets up.
Michelle, did not forget about you. You have any comments? Michelle?
Still there? It is late.
I'll try her again. Carol?
No, I don't, but thank you for asking.
Thanks, Michelle.
I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of this committee. I think it's been a long debate all year long, and will continue to be. And Parks Committee, the Parks workers, I see them out there working, they're doing a great job. Just wishing everybody Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Victoria?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Do we want, well, we are gonna hold a meeting in January, I think we confirmed that.
It's sounding like it. We'll take a vote on it, but yeah.
Everybody's good with the meeting in January, it'd be the 17th? Okay. Anything else? Any other discussion, Bill? Everybody's good? Want to go home? Get a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Oh, Carol.
All in favor?
Victoria.
Hi.
Opposed?
All
All
right,
right, guys.
what time is
Thank you,
it?
Counselor Glenn,
It
for
is
joining us.
9:04.
Right.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you all, yeah, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I just want to say, it's such a pleasure working with all of you.
You as well.
I look forward to Yep, going on. Yeah. It's a tough job, but, you know, I love it, and it's not like I have to do this every day, so. As long as it doesn't snow tonight, it'll be fine. Thanks, Jim.
I gave you one before. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't step on.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. Good to see you again.
Yeah, of course. Merry Christmas. Yeah. I'll see you around, I'm sure. Yeah, thanks a lot, Robbie. No, thanks for the reminder, man.
Stop. I gotta see this. This kid's playing a basketball.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry about that. Next meeting, or else, or I'm buying you a beer or something.